all know the Disney Junior show PJ Masks, but did you know PJ Masks was actually based on a French book series by Romuald, Le PJ Masks? I hate trying to say that because I feel like I'm gonna piss off French people. The book series ran from 2007 to 2020 and has 26 books, and I am going to talk about all of these books today because I just finished translating all of them. No, I don't speak French. I used Google Translate like a dweeb, but unless I meet a French person who I can commission to translate the series, this is as good as we got. First, I just want to explain some of the fundamental differences between the books and the show. The characters who appear in both the books and the show are Catboy, Owlette, Gecko, Romeo, Luna, Night Ninja, Armadillon, Lilyfae, Orticia, Pharaoh Boy, and Bastet. I guess Santa Claus too, if you really want to get technical. Oh, and Teacher and Cameron make an appearance. A lot of these characters have different names in the books, which all pop up on screen right now, and there are also a handful of characters that are completely unique to the books, but you'll see that as we get into it. The first book was released in 2007. Holy crap, I was 4. Y'all, if I was a French kid, I could have grown up with these books. That's crazy. Alright, I forgot to mention, these books don't open with any kind of origin story or anything. We'll get to that. The books open with the PJ Masks meeting a werewolf named Groguru who's threatening to eat them and stuff. So naturally, they start yelling back at him because they low-key don't give a crap. Great first impression of our heroes. Bubu's argument for why Groguru can't eat her is because she has school the next day. I can't lie, it's giving—
Invisible? I can't be invisible! I've got school tomorrow! And it's photo day!
Eventually, the PJs figure out that the moonlight is making Groguru big and scary, so they give him sunglasses and he turns into this tiny cute little guy and they all become friends. Aww. At the end of the book, they ask Groguru if he was serious about eating them, and he says, "Well, I'm not an idiot, I would have cooked you first," and takes off his sunglasses. The end. In the second book, there's this evil zookeeper named Gatso who looks like the stock image cartoon villain and is green for some reason. Why is he evil, you may ask? Because he owns a zoo and makes nasty, nasty money off of it. Well, the PJs come in and free the animals, so Gatso locks himself in the animal cage to protect himself Springtrap style. And then, I cannot make this up, the PJs attach balloons to the cage and say, "Fate will take care of you now." Yeah, that happened. So, after sending Gatso to his death, the PJs and animals go to the ocean and start singing to the moon. Then a big whale shows up, and it's revealed that the animals all live on an imaginary island. Remember that, it's important later. Fortunately, the PJ's murder attempt didn't go as planned, and Gatso ends up on the imaginary island. Whether or not he stole the animals from the island is unclear, but if he did, jeez. The book begins with the Festival of the Stars, where the constellations put on a big dance show because the constellations are alive. I promise you, I did not read this book before writing my AU. Anyway, Romeo pulls up in his new whip, which is this massive spider gourd that climbs over rooftops, and declares he wants to steal the moon and sell it in the cheese aisle at the grocery store. Obviously, the constellations are pretty pissed at Romeo's plan, but they can't go to Earth, so they can't really do anything to stop him. I promise I did not read this book before writing my AU. Of course, the PJs immediately show up and call his mech a pile of junk, but he is undeterred by this and pulls out a massive harpoon to seal the moon with. Well, in this world, no one can dream without the moon, so of course they try to stop him. Eventually, Groguru throws the machine over and the harpoon misses the moon. The constellations pull the harpoon and Romeo gets sucked into a black hole. You know, these endings are really not that different from the show. Lilyfae enters the scene in book 4, and she is a completely different character than in the show. She actually has ice powers in the books, so I'm not sure why they gave Ice Cub the powers instead, but oh well. One detail I find awesome is that the book mentions that her dress is woven from shooting star threads. What could be cooler than that? The story starts off with her making snow sculptures until the PJs show up and absolutely wreck the place. It wouldn't be a PJ Masks book without them being complete and total menaces to society now, would it? Well, Lilyfae tells them to scram, but they don't. So instead, she challenges them to a snowman building contest. They build themselves out of snow, and she straight up insults them, calling them ugly and saying they're only good for scaring birds. I really like the illustration on this page. So the PJs get caught up in a snowball fight, Yo-Yo attacks them elf style and hits Lily's sculpture. Guess what happens next? I'll give you 3 seconds to guess. The sculpture comes alive, grows a body, and attacks them. Because why not? That's the only logical next step in the story, right? Aw, but look at that. He wasn't attacking them by throwing them into a snowball. He just wanted to give Lily this ice flower he made. Aw. Even though Lily Faye was annoyed by the PJs, the end of the book mentions that she actually had a lot of fun with them and can't wait to see them again. So cute. A wooden sculpture in the museum comes to life, not unlike Monkey Goo. His name is Utupe, and he is the spirit of the forest. When trying to return to the jungle he came from, he gets lost in the city and starts crying, which made me want to cry. I'm not gonna lie, that broke my heart, man. The PJs show up and reassure Utupe that they will help him get home, but not before the cops Agent Pin and Agent Pawn show up, immediately assuming the PJs stole the artifact from the museum. Cops, am I right? And that's when we get one of the most wild lines in the book. Hands up and masks off, you little troublemakers, or we'll shoot without warning. Well, that escalated quickly. Utupe grows a magic beanstalk to divert the cops before the gang heads into the sewers and almost gets crushed by construction machines. Miraculously, they somehow end up in the jungle on the other side of the world. The bad news is, Utupe got crushed to death. But what do you know? A bird tells them to plant a seed, a flower grows, and the little guy is back from the dead. The gang goes to frolic in the jungle while the last illustration reveals that Agent Pin and Agent Pawn are still in the beanstalk. Good riddance. This next book is a direct continuation of the last one, where the PJs are still in the jungle with Utupe. Frolicking about in the jungle, they stumble upon the PJ totem, which had me just as, if not more, shocked than they were. The PJs immediately notice that the totem displays their specific spirit animals, so they're pretty surprised to be part of what seems like a prophecy. There's this whole thing where a whole herd of buffalo comes out of the bushes and charges them, but what do you know? Their actual spirit animals jump out to protect them, declaring that the kids are their proteges and they specifically chose them. One thing I think is cool is that in the books, Yo-Yo is actually based on a tiger, not a generic cat like Catboy in the show. I mean, of course he still has the tiger stripes, but I prefer the tiger spirit animal, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, the buffaloes don't believe the spirit animals, they're pissed and continue attacking, and suddenly all of the zoo animals from book 2 show up. That's right, kids! This jungle is the land of imagination. When I tell you this plot twist blew my mind, I'm not even kidding. Okay, so it wasn't that shocking given that they traveled to, quote, the other side of the world through the sewers, but still, the owl spirit animal shows the PJs that the jungle is getting closer and closer to their world, and it is their job to keep the two divided. I genuinely don't even know how to process this lore because it all just seems very heavy for a handful of first graders to protect this magical world from Earth, and the logistics of it intrigue me. The animals give the kids a ride back home, and I just want to read the second to last page. So, may luck be with you, said Roughhorn. It's time for you to go home, children, for you carry a message of hope. Explain to anyone who will listen that the magic of the world is fading day by day, but that it's not too late. Remember that we are your totems, your protectors, said Yato the tiger. Don't forget us, and we will watch over you, said Olgi the owl. Even when we're grown up? Asked Glue Glue. Even when you're grown up, replied Chua. Forever. I think that is just beautiful. This book introduces the Mascropules, a rat named Grigri, a worm named Olbert, and a fly named Xena. They're kind of like the book's version of the Wolfies, the anti-PJ Masks who beef with them for no reason. These kids find a candy dispenser and run into the PJs who start fighting with them until all of them forget about it and start eating the candy together. But oh no, the candy tastes like shit. Suddenly, the neighborhood dentist randomly spawns in and they're like, hey, your candy sucks ass. His only response is, well, I guess you'll have to come see me then. Insane marketing tactic, by the way. Obviously, the kids don't respond well to this, so they dump the candy on his head and scram. I love this illustration, by the way. Book 8 is a Christmas special. The PJs visit Santa's factory to deliver a letter to him and start bothering him, like they do. Santa tells them that because no one believes in him anymore, he has resorted to hiding at the bottom of a pipe dressed as a burglar. He warns them that there's this crazy monster that protects the factory, and by George, is it terrifying. It starts grabbing people and vomiting toys, and it's really crazy, and then it just sneezes and falls apart. The PJs reveal that the letter they were delivering was actually filled with sneezing power because they are the actual worst children ever. But Santa doesn't care because he's just happy to get a letter after all this time. Raise your standards, Santa. What is this post-apocalyptic world where no one writes to Santa anymore anyway? Like, not even one kid? No wonder the land of imagination is in danger. This book introduces the Sandman, who quite frankly needs no introduction. He's pissed because the PJs aren't asleep, so I guess he didn't get the memo or something. He blows sand on them and they blow it back towards him because, surprise, surprise, it did nothing. This answers the age-old question of why don't they sleep? Because they're magically resistant to sleep. My theories were correct. Everyone go home. Anyway, the Sandman is like, I have other ways to put you to sleep, which is menacing? Sir? We are talking about the sleep you wake up from, right? The whole book is just him trying different ways to make them sleep. Again, that sounds so bad. But of course, nothing works. Eventually, he resorts to saying he'll sew their eyelids shut and make them eat a soup full of sleeping pills. What the hell, man? The French do not play. Ironically, through all this battling, he wakes the whole town up, and only then do the PJs finally go to bed. These books are hilarious, man. Romeo flies in on a pink car and shoots the PJs with ABC gum before introducing his latest invention, the kissing machine. I'm not sure if that's translated correctly, but if it is, well, it's exactly what it says on the tin. The robot is basically just an overly affectionate mother and eventually throws them into the washing machine, so yeah, we're just trying to drown them now. At one point, Romeo asks if they have any last words before they die, which is wonderful. But of course, the remote breaks, the robot is now useless, and Glue Glue tells Romeo to kill himself. So Romeo, you have a problem? Yo-Yo asks. Why don't you invent something more useful next time? For example, a machine that could make you disappear, says Glue Glue. Or one that would make you less stupid, adds Bibu. So basically in the show, Romeo built a father figure, and in the books, he built a mother figure. He's so orphan-coded, my dude. Lily Faye returns! Contrary to the last book, where she couldn't wait to see the PJs again, she once again gets annoyed at their presence and sends them into the dangerous woods to get lost and die. Quote, Lily Faye shouldn't send them there because it's not safe to go into those woods at night. She tells them that there's magic pumpkin soup in the woods, and there is, but there are also killer pumpkins that try to eat them. The PJs trick the pumpkins into fighting with each other to escape and find out that the soup isn't magic. They're mad at Lily Faye, so they bring back one of the killer pumpkins to eat her. Bibu flies off with a group of storks and almost gets hit by an airplane, but fortunately one of the storks catches her before she falls to her death. I'm sure you've guessed where this is headed already, but what do you know? The storks are carrying babies. Bibu deadass says, I want a sibling, but I don't know how to get one, and the stork replies with, we're responsible for delivery, not manufacturing. Wild topic to bring up in a kid's book. Hard cut to a mountain of carnivorous cabbages. They're mad because they want to deliver the babies instead of the storks, which I'm guessing is a reference to Cabbage Patch Kids. May Xavier Roberts rot in hell forever. So the cabbages set out to obtain a human infant to consume. This is where we're at now. Evil baby-eating cabbages. I'll give credit where credit is due. These books are wildly creative. Whether that's for better or worse, I don't know. For legal reasons, that is a joke. There's a horrifying moment where a cabbage attacks and a baby almost falls into its mouth, so that's nice. If storks deliver babies, babies? Are failed pregnancies just evil cabbages eating them? Think about it. Fortunately, the cabbage gets hit by a passenger plane, causing 9/11, and Bibu sets out to deliver the baby to its parents. But oh? What's this? The address is her address! Yup, that's right, the baby is Bibu's sister. Bet you didn't see that one coming. I love that Amaya has a younger sister in the books, and I originally wanted to fit it into my AU somehow, but it just didn't really work for what I was going for. The Sandman is back, and he is still pissed that the PJs are awake, but knows not to mess with them at this point. Not only did someone steal the Sandman's sand, but the astronomical clock is broken, delaying the rising of the sun. Lily Faye explains that the clock regulates the movement of the planets, and she needs it to get home, but she can't hear it, and every night it appears in a different location. Man, I really could have used this for my AU. The PJs find the clock, and also find who broke it and stole the sand. The Sandman's son. Surprise, surprise, the Sandman is a father. The Sand Boy, who looks like a tiny green version of Night Ninja, declares that he broke the clock so it would be night forever and his dad would be proud of him. Check out this vintage Catco photo, by the way. Bibu fixes the clock and Sandboy almost gets crushed in the gears Lightning McQueen style, but his dad swoops in and saves him just in time. Sandboy then tells his dad that everything was the PJ's fault, which honestly is a pretty believable story considering how annoying and obnoxious and destructive they are. Also, bald Sandman reveal.
Torturing people who have hair.
I'm not gonna lie, the cover of this book majorly creeps me out. The beginning of this book confirms that Yo-Yo does indeed have parents. Plural. He has multiple parents. He tells them he did his homework and cleaned his room when he didn't, so naturally, a giant sock monster comes out of his closet and starts eating all the mess. Yo-Yo is pretty pissed at this, so he throws the monster out the window. Apparently, the lore of the sock monster is that he appears in closets on the night of the new moon and grows in size when he eats clothes and hears lies. The monster grows higher than the houses and sits in the canal, flooding the entire city. This is terrifying and I don't like it. The PJs try to unravel the monster, but they get tangled up in string, and as they're about to die, Yo-Yo admits that he lied to his parents. This causes the sock monster to shrink. They continue telling the sock monster different truths until he dies, and this part just really reminds me of the Truth Ray scene from Robo-Wolf in Season 4.
I spend a whole hour each morning doing my hair.
Let me just read off some of the things they admitted to this monster. Bibu ate too much candy, didn't brush her teeth, and put flour in her mother's umbrella. Glue Glue got a bad grade, watched too much TV, and put toothpaste in his father's shoes. Yo-Yo put a sardine in the teacher's bag, put curlers on his cat, and hasn't changed his socks for 3 days. Biggest takeaway from this book, these kids really suck. Utupe returns, warning the PJs that the Rainbow Dreamer is in trouble and he needs their help to protect him. So, they go back to the land of imagination. Romeo shows up with a bulldozer, and Yo-Yo immediately says his hair is probably lice-infested, so naturally, Romeo tries to kill them with the bulldozer, while Glue Glue casually eats mangoes in the corner. Now, who is the Dreamer, you may ask? Well, we're about to find out. Romeo captures the Dreamer, waking it up, and the whole forest disappears. That's right, this entire island exists within the sloth's dreams. Well, Romeo gets bored standing in a desert and lets the sloth go. Sloth falls back asleep and the island reappears. The end. Glue Glue is upset because earlier in the day he got in trouble at school for talking too much, which is ironic considering that in the show he didn't want to speak in class. A new character named Magister the Witch is introduced, and she directs 100 birds to steal books from the school library and rewrite them because witches are always portrayed as evil. Glue Glue assures her that he'll write a book with a good witch, and that's the end of that. A new character approaches. His name is Energuman, and he shows up in a flying car declaring that he just moved to town, and for his first mission, he wants to take down this Loch Ness monster that just randomly spawned in the water. The PJs try to stop him from antagonizing the creature, but too late, it snaps back and sprays him with water before disappearing under the surface. Glue Glue dives in to see where it went, and finds out that their baby is trapped in a net. With the help of Energuman, they rescue the baby, and everything is okay. At the the end of the book, it actually states that the serpent's gender is unspecified, so yeah, we love a gender-ambiguous queen. There are no villains in the city, and the PJs are bored, so naturally they dig through Romeo's stuff, find a robot that clearly has a sign saying "Danger, do not operate," and activate it. Well, the robot immediately starts a blizzard and buries the whole town in snow, Elsa style. Romeo flips out and helps them melt the snowman in the chimney of his factory, because there's so much snow he can't even get in the door. Bro is pissed as hell and calls the PJs out for being the villains. And they in turn call him a hero for helping save the city. There are only 3 words to describe my reaction to this book. What the hell? Romeo gets a 0 on his school assignment and everyone makes fun of him. So immediately he decides to blow up the school. As he's about to demolish the school with his demolition robot, nice of him to wait until it's night so no one gets hurt, the PJs show up, just to keep making fun of him, mostly his hair, until he files a bunch of missiles at them. Well, he starts throwing pieces of the robot at them until the robot falls apart, and then starts crying. This makes the PJs sort of actually feel bad for him, so they start to compliment him and tell him that even though he may not be good at certain school subjects like poetry, he's a genius at mechanics. He helps them fix the cat car, and overall it's a super sweet ending. Well, we've made it to book 20, which is the official origin story of the PJ Masks, published in 2016. According to the book, every child has their own spirit animal that chases away nightmares and gives them powers. Sorceline, however, was an insomniac who couldn't sleep or dream, so she captured the spirit animals out of jealousy and the legend fell into oblivion. However, 3 of the spirit animals escaped before they disappeared for good, and chose the PJs to help free the rest of the animals. The lizard finds Greg eating cookies in the middle of the night, which is hilarious. Then the book drops this banger of a line. They certainly hadn't found the strongest or most heroic children, but definitely the funniest and most likable ones. Make of that what you will. The PJs start battling Sorceline using their new powers, during which Glue Glue eats a moth by accident. Although initially disgusted, he realizes it tastes good, and then proceeds to eat all of Sorceline's moths, rendering her powerless and releasing the spirit animals. At the end of the book, it shows the spirit animals returning to the totem. This is my absolute favorite book in the series because I love a good origin story, and this one is so simple yet intriguing. Much less confusing than the show where you're just thrown into the middle of things with no explanation. I really tried to incorporate the lore of this book in particular into my AU, and I hope I did the magic of the story justice. It's Sorceline's birthday, and because no one remembered, she decides to steal all of the toys on Earth. By the way, she explicitly travels from the Luna Lair to Earth. This book came out 2 years before the Moon Fortress debuted in the show, confirming that Luna has always in fact been from the moon. The PJs battle her, and they summon the Astro Owl from the totem, which is the book's version of the Owl Glider. The PJs give Sorceline toys as a trick to make her haul too heavy, and it works, causing her to fall off her Luna board, where Bibu has to convince Sorceline to drop the bags so she doesn't die. Sorceline is actually pretty happy that the PJs showed up, so she gets over the toy thing quick. The PJs promise to always show up and ruin her plans, and Sorceline promises to always make new plans for them to ruin. Together, they return all the toys, and it's really sweet. To me, this seems like the book's answer to Gecko Saves Christmas because it follows the exact same plot as the episode did. Of course, that makes this a favorite book of mine by default. This book is the debut of Ortisha. Although the book was released in 2017, Ortisha wouldn't join the show until 2021. This is also the first book where Ninjaka makes an appearance. He steals the seed that Romeo crafted, and after a short battle, they accidentally activate it. The seed grows into Ortisha, and she immediately starts covering the town in monster plants. The PJs battle her at first before realizing that, hey, the plants are actually kind of pretty, and encourage her to grow more. Ortisha decorates the town in flowers, and they actually apologize for misjudging her. She ends up releasing everyone and planting flowers in Romeo's hair. The PJs refer to Romeo as a mother, which begs the question: does that make Ninjaka the dad? The This has got to be the most characters we've seen in a book yet, featuring not just the PJs, but the Maskerpools, Romeo, Lilyfae, Energuman, and Paturo. Energuman teaches a superhero school for the kids, where he basically just tries to sell his gadgets to them. The PJs start fighting with the Maskerpools like they always do, while Totoro is, quote, still wondering whether he's a villain or a hero. Romeo shows up in his robot to take over the school, and while trying to stop him, Energuman accidentally traps everyone in one of his nets, thoroughly pissing everyone off. They try to stop Romeo without him, but it ends up being one of his random balls that Romeo's robot finally trips over. The kids praise him for this despite it being a total accident, and he just kinda owns it despite Romeo calling him out. I'm not gonna lie, Energuman just feels like a grown-up armadillo. This book reveals that Yo-Yo's daytime name is Sasha, while the other two remain Amaya and Greg. The kids go on a field trip to the museum and are really interested in the legend of Apophis, a serpent that tries to swallow the boat that carries the sun. However, the boat is defended by gods, so he is never successful. Well, would you look at that? Apophis is real, emerging from the sarcophagus in the museum and setting off on his chariot to find the boat. The PJs come across the boat before he does and immediately start fangirling, much to the annoyance of the god guarding the boat. Well, Apophis shows up, the PJs immediately make fun of him because that's what they do, and he turns into a giant snake. As the PJs battle Apophis, he ends up hypnotizing them, and the god reveals herself to be Bastet, the cat of the sun. This book is a two-parter. Bastet flies off to fight Apophis while the PJs are hypnotized, trapped in cocoons of his bandages, which... ew. Not only can Bastet fly, but she has sun claws that can cut with ribbons of light and can create storms of golden sand, where she turns Apophis into a golden statue. I don't know, guys. Bastet got nerfed hard in the show. Bastet and the spirit animals wake up the PJs, but Bastet's spell has already broken and she is swallowed by Apophis. Bibu shines the sun disk, strengthening Bastet's powers and allowing her to escape. When Apophis turns back into a mummy, the group finds a riddle on one of his bandages. They steal his staff, his bandages get caught in the wheel of the chariot, and he straight up just poofs into thin air. Bastet sails away on her solar boat, and the PJs put the empty bandages back in the sarcophagus. These books were released in 2018 and 2019, while Pharaoh Boy and Bastet wouldn't join the show until 2021 and 2023 respectively. We made it to the last book. While spying on the PJ Masks base, which is straight up just HQ from the show, the Maskerpools see that they get their powers from what is basically a small version of the PJ crystal from the show. Upon stealing the crystal, the Maskerpools find out it doesn't work. The PJs explain that it doesn't actually give them power at all, and it's purely decorative. I wish we could say the same about the show, am I right? Although the PJs originally made fun of them because, why wouldn't they actually compliment the Maskerpools and reassure them that even though they have different powers, they're pretty good at what they do. The series concluded in late 2020. I think this book made the greatest effort to align with the show because it had HQ, the PJ Crystal, and even Owlette's super owl feathers. And that's a basic summary of the whole series. Overall, I think the show is a great adaptation of the book. It keeps a lot of elements similar while not being a completely accurate recreation and keeping the two worlds separate. I do wish, though, that the show included more elements of the lore, specifically regarding the spirit animals, and I wouldn't have minded seeing characters like the Sandman either. When it comes to which PJ mean girls are the worst, though, it's definitely the books. Those little shits are absolute hellions. Now, if you want to read the books on your own, I am currently working on uploading all of them into a playlist, and the Google Drive link to the PDF translations is in the description as well. If you'd like to see the original books in French, I'll have the channel and playlist that I got them from linked in the description too. Kevin out!